when I was in Mumbai in India on a trip, and I think I've shared this story before, but it really was powerful. We went through this district, and I'm looking out the window, and it just looked like, if you've ever been to Mumbai, there are just millions and millions and millions of people stacked on top of each other. It is a massive, massive sprawling city, metropolis, whatever you want to call it. And it just looked like everything else. And I remember our guide said to us, hey, did you notice anything different about this area? And all of us on the bus were like, nah, it just looked like markets like the rest of India. And he said to us, okay, we're going to go back through it again. He said, actually, what we just went through was the red light district. He said that in this area, there are like thousands and thousands of people being trafficked right now underneath our noses. He said, we're going to go drive through again. This time I want you to look for every woman or young boy if they've got makeup on their faces. If they've got like lipstick on and makeup, then they're prostitutes or they're being sold in some way, shape, or form. But most of these people are in bonded slavery. Like, it's not their own choice. And so we drove through it again. And I tell you, my heart just sank, because as we drove through again, I just see literally hundreds, if not thousands of people behind doors that you'd see a little cracked door, and suddenly you'd see 7 people behind a door, young children, all with makeup on, all being sold. And the thing is this, I went through that street and I didn't notice it because I wasn't educated. I didn't know any difference. But when I went through the second time and suddenly I had a little bit more information, I was then faced with something. What am I going to do about it? Now that I know, now there's a responsibility that I've got to do something with it. I could just turn around and never let that experience change me, but I didn't. I said, wow, this has changed my life. What has changed my life? I just think, get educated about the issues, because when you're educated about it, you can actually do something about it. Don't be afraid of learning about some of the the realities of the world, because by knowledge, you can actually have a bigger impact.
Yeah, and I like what you said, that we do have privilege here. We have the resources and the means to change people's lives across the world for the better.
Yep.
Not that we want their lives to look like ours, not that we think we're superior, but we do have the means, even if it's just $25 a month. Yeah.
And it doesn't, when you give like $25 to an organization today, it doesn't feel like you're making impact.
Right.
You kind of like give the money and you get your tax deduction. Maybe you'll get an email from the organization that says, hey, thanks for your donation. But that's it. You don't is it really making a difference? Again, we come back down to the power of a giving circle. Like, if we all do that and we can deploy millions of dollars to a project, then it feels like we're having a much bigger impact. So I shared a little bit of a story when I was in Guatemala in this area called Zone 18, which is, the drug problem in this area is so bad. They literally have gates, these massive gates around Zone 18, so that when the drug problem gets really bad and the violence gets bad, the government literally locks those gates and keeps people inside, so they have to figure it out themselves. And I was there working with this. It was a children's program, a program giving kids education, feeding them, because basically, as a kid, if they don't go to school, then they go into drugs and they're dead by the time they're 19 years old. But I've never seen or experienced a place that devalued human life like this area. It was just the feeling was hopeless, and it felt like if you talk to kids, they had no other choice but to go into the drug business to provide for their families, and they end up dead. But I remember walking through the streets, and I said to the guy who ran the program, I'm like, it doesn't feel dangerous. We're walking around, it doesn't feel dangerous. He said, oh, that's because you're with me. And he said, because, as an organization, we're helping, like, a lot of the kids who come, these drug cartels will send their kids there because it's the only way that these kids can kind of escape the reality of life. And I'll never forget, we were walking through the street about to do a home visit. We were about to go, there was a mother who was dying, and so we wanted to go meet with her. And on the way, we hear these 2 gun pops, pop, pop. And it was clearly gunshots, and it wasn't that far away from us. And we're walking through these little tiny little roads. About 30 seconds later, these two girls come running by us, and they're covered in blood, like completely covered in blood. After I just had a conversation with the guy about how we feel so safe on these streets and everything, covered with blood, they run by. And the guy who runs the program turns to me and says, "We need to get out of here." And as we turned around to get by, then these two young 16-year-old kids ran by us with machine guns and ran off, and we quickly hightailed it back to the location. And and that's that for me. It was a reminder, like, this is the reality that a lot of people live with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was so far removed from my normal reality. In fact, I was walking the streets thinking we're safe, and then suddenly there's gunshots and there's somebody just got murdered, like just right down there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, look, we in the Western world, we have our life is fairly safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are comfortable. We have this, and we don't really understand what life is like for a lot of people in other countries, in different areas around the world, who are in war zones, who are living as refugees. We don't understand their pain. I've been fortunate enough to actually maybe experience little glimpses of it and have let that change me. But I say, for the rest of us, if you can't travel and you can't get there, look, just remember, when you read these stories, these are human stories. These are real people with real families, with real feelings, and they're enduring stuff, and we can make a difference. So if you can make a difference, why not?
Exactly. Well, and I love, like, you have stories from so many places. You've been to, over 30 different countries. And I think with Glow, another thing that sets us apart is that we do hit so many different types of issues and causes around the world. So, like, someone like me, who I care deeply about, a certain variety of causes, I don't feel like my $25 a month has to go to this one, or like I have to choose. I don't have to pick and choose.